Hello and welcome to Matters of the Heart. I am Gabriel Gonsalves, an international coach, teacher, and trainer specialized in the field of heart intelligence. I help people create relationships, lifestyles, and careers that they love. And I do this by showing you how to access your inner resources of love, joy, wisdom, and power that become available to you when you start connecting with your emotional, intuitive, energetic, and spiritual heart. Through individual and group coaching programs, online courses, and live seminars, I teach a wholehearted or a heart-centered approach to personal and spiritual development, emotional mastery, and conscious relationship building. Basically, I'm here to help you or to support you in giving birth to the most amazing, loving, joyful, and wise version of yourself. That's where your true power really resides. You can find out more about me by visiting my website, heartintelligencecoach.com, where you can book a session if you like, or where you can find out more about my upcoming seminars around the world. Today in Matters of the Heart, we're going to be talking about conscious completion, the art of ending a relationship with appreciation and love. If you're listening live, and you have any questions that you'd like me to answer, then you can go ahead and type it in the Q&A section here in the Zoom platform at the bottom of your screen. Before we get started, let's take a few minutes to center ourselves in our hearts. And we do this always with the intention of just becoming open and available and receptive to the wisdom of the heart. You know, oftentimes I like to speak in metaphors and tell stories. And so by being relaxed in an attitude of openness, I always like to think that an open heart always begins with an open mind. What we're really doing is we're becoming receptive so that new ideas, new insights in which we can look at our old problems in a new way. And oftentimes it is in looking at an old problem in a new way that we begin to find new solutions. So we do this by centering in our hearts, by placing a hand over the middle of our chest. It doesn't matter which one it is, and beginning to breathe deeply, evenly, and slowly. So you want to breathe slower than you normally would. You want to breathe nice and deep, all the way down into the middle of the stomach, or all the way down as far as you can. And as you do this, you can go ahead and close your eyes if you want, as long as obviously you're not driving. You don't want to do this when you're driving. And as you breathe in and out of the heart, put on a big smile. The physiological response that you begin to experience by just putting on a smile begins to release oxytocin and a series of neurochemicals that begin to literally shift your vibration. You begin to shift into a place of love and appreciation, which literally changes the frequency, the electromagnetic frequency of your heart to 0.1 hertz. So as you breathe in and out and put on a smile, allow the following words of appreciation and love to be received within you. As I begin by, in the name of the Holy I Am Presence, and the presence of the beloved, the presence of divine love within our own hearts, attuning and connecting to the loving heart of God, our Father and Mother. It is by connecting to this heavenly source of divine love that we now become open and receptive and allow this love to fill our hearts, igniting within our own hearts the love, the wisdom, and the power of our source, recognizing that it is the central heart of the cosmos, the central heart of God, in which we're now living, breathing, and having our being, that our nature is one of love. And that by establishing this connection, we are now meeting the requirements to become unified with the universal source of love, wisdom, power, through and by means of our hearts. Today, as we explore the conversation or the topic of ending relationships from a place of appreciation and love, let us just know that ultimately, when it comes to relationships, once we have established a deep, meaningful connection with another person, we always will continue to be connected and unified in the heart of the divine, that even though the person may not be anymore in our lives in physical form, either because they moved on, or they might be with somebody else, or maybe they passed on and transitioned into another dimension on the other side of the veil, our connection with them remains in the timeless space of the infinite loving heart of God, remains always united, and we remains always connected. For this connection and for the deep knowing that ultimately in the heart of God, we're all one, we give thanks and we let it be. And it is so. Amen. It's kind of a good place to start, isn't it? To start from the perspective that even though the conversation we're having today about conscious completion, the art of ending a relationship with appreciation and love, that ultimately there is no such thing as ends. In the timeless reality of the spiritual, ultimately there's no such a thing as an end. What appears to be an end is more often than not the beginning of a whole new relationship. And I can attest to this because attest to this. When I speak to you about conscious completion, I want to make it very clear that I'm not speaking from the purely conceptual, intellectual realm. I am someone who very early in life, I was exposed to what it means to lose people that I loved. I lost my father when I was 19 years old, then my brother a couple of years after that, then my best friend, then a girlfriend. Then over time, I lost my mother and my sister. And so I have been in a position where I have suffered, if you may, because the art of letting go of somebody, or the process of letting go of someone with whom we build strong emotional attachments is painful. I'm someone who has experienced a lot of grief and pain over the loss of people that I loved. And if there's something that I have learned, that experiencing so many losses, especially at a very early age, was just this awareness that any time that I might be spending with someone that I deeply care and love might actually be the very last time that I might be with them. I did not get a chance to say goodbye to my brother when he passed. Completing the relationship or finding closure took me a very, very long time. On the other hand, my sister, who passed away about 2 years ago, she called me to say goodbye. My sister had been diagnosed with a rare type of blood cancer. And what happened in her case was that she'd given up on chemo. It wasn't working. And she just decided to not fight anymore and then just to surrender to the process of letting go of her life and surrendering to letting herself go, transition into the other side. She knew it was time for her to go. And she had the wisdom and the insight to call me 2-3 days before to tell me how much she loved me, to speak of her regrets about how she had really wanted to come visit with me, and she left not being able to fulfill that desire. But reminding me how much she loved me, how much she appreciated having me, and how much she wished our relationship would continue the way that it had been for many years. And I have to say that having had the opportunity to have said goodbye to her, even though I have to admit that when that happened, a big part of me was in denial about the situation. Obviously, as somebody that loves life and loved my sister, there's a part of me that hoped that she would heal and things would go back to the way they used to be. But nonetheless, I had the opportunity to say goodbye. I had the opportunity to close with love and appreciation. I had the opportunity to thank her for what she was, for all what she did, and also had the opportunity to tell her how much I loved her. And that in itself allowed me to move through the death of that relationship or that transition with a lot of greater ease. It was still painful, but it allowed me to move with a lot of greater ease. Now, as you're listening to me, I want to invite you to think about people that you lost throughout your life. And ask yourself, which are the losses that you've struggled the most with? What is it about those relationships that came to an end, either because you ended them or the other person did, or life, destiny ended them by either moving you to two different places or the other person dying? And I want you to ask yourself, what was it that allowed me over time to move forward, to really ultimately end up releasing the other person and surrendering to the process of letting the relationship or everything come to an end. When I asked myself the same question in preparation for this podcast, what I've come up with, what I realized is that, number one, over time, I was able to find that place of love and appreciation. It was really only finding that place of love and appreciation for the other person, what ultimately let me know that I was at the end of the grieving process. Oftentimes, as we grieve the end of a relationship, we move through those stages of grief where we are in denial, we get angry, we try to bargain. And, if you're aware of that scale, which is actually, it's pretty much spot on. But ultimately, when we find that place of acceptance and then begin to see the gift that the relationship brought us, it becomes easier to let go once love and appreciation begins to surface, which ultimately, as you heard me say over and over again, is really what opens the heart. What opens the heart. Now, something that I know is true as it regards to this topic of conscious completion and the art of ending a relationship with appreciation and love is that what you're going to be hearing today from me will probably seem a little bit idealistic, utopic, okay? And I face it. I acknowledge it. I own the fact that I am an idealist. I would not be doing what I do. I would not be who I am if at some level I did not believe in an ideal world where we walk as brothers and sisters with a greater sense of love, connection, compassion, gratitude, understanding for one another. In fact, that is what I do, why I do what I do. But reality, obviously, has shown me differently, which is why I believe my work, the work that I came here to do, is so badly needed in this world. The ultimate truth is that the majority of relationships that we will have and will experience, we will not be able to consciously complete them. What oftentimes begins with a tremendous amount of excitement, attraction, and love, more often than not ends with a lot of anger, fear, frustration, and pain, which is why I believe it's so important to talk about this, because I do believe that it doesn't have to be this way. It doesn't have to be this way. Yes, it's true. Relationships are here to bring out not only the best in each and every one of us, but also the worst as our wounds begin to get triggered and all emotions, more often than not, dating all the way back to our infancy begins to get triggered, and all the many ways in which our needs are not being fulfilled, or many other ways in which we learned how to love from our parents begin to surface. And so hence the need for having some kind of a framework of being able to do this. And so let's break this down a little bit. Conscious completion, the art of ending a relationship with appreciation and love. Now, to complete consciously means that we, as the individuals in a relationship, more often than not, obviously with the other person, if they so choose to have a conscious completion process, we create a safe space for one another where we can sit down and where we can, just like a relationship began with appreciation and love, also end the relationship in the same way in which it began. So that we don't have that. So like the last experience that we have of the other person is not one of loss and suffering and pain and hurt and all of that. Now, if you were listening to the previous podcast, last week's broadcast, in which I spoke about how to have a difficult conversation with someone that you love, and in which I share a 9-step format or framework, which I use and teach my coaches, then you'll know that the conscious completion is very basically another very difficult conversation, but whose intention from the very beginning is to bring the relationship to an end, or a cycle in that relationship to an end. And what I mean by a cycle in that relationship is that more often than not, sometimes it's not the relationship that it comes to an end, but a cycle in that relationship. And that is true both living persons and people who passed away. And what I mean by that is, my relationship with my sister, despite her passing 2 years ago, continues. I continue to have conversations with her in my sleep. She continues to whisper in my ears when I walk, or sometimes I find myself giving people advice that she would give me. And then so she continues to be alive within me. And the truth is that every person that you've ever interacted with will continue to live within you. So the relationship will continue. Sometimes the relationship or the person may come back into your life and you'll initiate a new cycle into your life. But those are obviously very special cases in which those things do happen. But the relationship will continue. All right. So just as a quick recap to create the context of where we're headed. All right. Last week I shared a 9-step process where we begin by number 1, acknowledging the desire, the need, the longing to want to have a conversation with somebody, and just asking yourself, why is having this conversation so important and meaningful to you? So you want to start with the why. So that number 2, then you can then clarify that intention. So that you know what it is that you're wanting by having this conversation, right? So always start with why. That builds up the clarity. And the next thing you want to do is you want to reach out, invite the other person, and say something to them along the lines of, hey, there's something I want to talk to you about. When will it be a good time for you? And then once you are able to sit down with this person, which again is a conversation, all right? This is not being done over email. This is not being done over WhatsApp. This is a real life interaction between two people who sit down, who become really present and real with one another, where you now sit down and you set the context for the conversation. And you want to begin also valuing the other person, valuing the relationship, like saying something along the lines of, hey, you mean a lot to me. And I want to share with you what's in my heart. There's some things that have been bothering me, or I don't really feel this relationship is what I was hoping it would be. Whatever it is, but you want to begin to, as you begin the conversations, to set some kind of a context, and then agree to hold some kind of a safe space for one another, where you can make an agreement to hold the space by asking something along the lines of, would it be okay if you just listen to me without interrupting me? And just listen to me until I'm done. And then I will do the same thing for you, so that you can create a space where you can just really open up your heart and share what's true for you. And then move into a place of just being really real with the other person. Right? So you don't want to rehearse this kind of conversation. Obviously, you want to get clarity about what it is that you want to communicate, which is different than rehearsing. But the idea is that you get very present, you get very real, and you share what it is that you truly think, feel, sense, want, what it is that you're longing for, and that you really lean into your edge and give yourself permission to say what you're afraid of saying, asking for what it is that you're afraid of asking. And then do your best to seek to connect rather than to understand. And what I mean by that is that the moment that you give yourself permission to really be present and real and listening with your whole heart to another person and become vulnerable, when the moment you start doing that, then true connection begins to happen. True connection, emotional connection with another being, requires vulnerability. So as you go through this process of listening, mirroring back, getting clarification, allowing whatever the other person is telling you to really sink in, and for you to respond from a place of what's real and true for you, then obviously you begin to arrive at some common desire to want to move forward or not move forward in a particular way. All right, determining what it is that the next steps are going to be that you're both going to be taking. So that ultimately, by the time you have reached the end of the conversation, you both have reached some kind of an agreement with regards to what it is that you both want, even though sometimes the agreement might not necessarily be what you were hoping it would be. I mean, if you're having a conversation with somebody and the other person tells you that they think or feel that the relationship is not going anywhere, that it's not what they want, then ultimately you're going to have to surrender to that and release them, you know. And what's really interesting is that the art of completion requires you to say that you're not okay with that you're angry about it, to say that you feel incomplete. Because in being able to express yourself and say, I'm angry, it's not what I wanted this instead, I feel let down, I feel heartbroken, I feel sad, by you being able to actually speak your truth about what you're feeling in that moment, you complete it. As opposed to when something has been left unsaid, unmentioned, right? That's what conscious completion means. It means that nothing has been left unsaid. The outcome may not be what you bargained or what you had hoped it would be, but you walk away feeling that you were heard, feeling that you gave it your best, feeling that you asked for what you wanted. And if the result was not what you had hoped or wish that it was, at least you being able to express your dissatisfaction with it allows you to complete the process. To be able to say, I am not complete, actually completes the process. This is really what is the what is the paradox of conscious completion. To be able to say, I don't feel complete the process. It lets the other person know that you're incomplete. Think of it in terms of, let's say you're having a conversation with someone and you are in a very difficult part of the conversation, and then just simply say, I can't talk to you anymore, and then they walk away, and you have all these things inside of you that were not expressed, right? What happens when you do that? Well, if you're like me, chances are that you will feel angry, helpless. Helpless is one of the emotions that comes up quite a bit. You feel not heard, not understood. And obviously there's no sense of closure. Something that was open is still open, remain open. And it's a very uncomfortable space to be in if you've ever been in a situation like that. But imagine if instead the other person says to you, listen, I have a client in 5 minutes. I cannot talk to you anymore. All right. I'm feeling frustrated. We're not getting anywhere. I have to go away. All right. And then you're able to say, this is not what I wanted. I wanted to tell you all these other things. I'm not okay that we cannot finish our conversation. I'm angry. I'm pissed. Right. And you're like, but I wish it wasn't like that. And you go, yes, I'm sorry, but it's beyond my control. I have to see a client. All right. We're going to have to speak another time. I'm sorry. And then you're like, I'm not okay with this. But at least see the fact that you said, I'm not okay with this. This is not what I wanted, allows you to leave the conversation, knowing that, well, there will be another opportunity to find the next level of completion. But at least what you initiated in that moment, you were able to find to some kind of a completion, right? You could always say, okay, well, can we speak tomorrow or tonight when we get home, or whatnot. So what makes a conscious completion process, first of all, it has to be done in person, in real life, right? And again, this isn't an ideal situation, where the truth is the majority of us will probably end up doing a lot of the completion maybe in the form of an email or written communication where you bless the other person, where you wish them well. And again, this comes down to one of the things I was talking about last week, and in that this kind of difficult conversations, we avoid them like the plague because we are very afraid of how the other person may react. We want to avoid uncomfortable feelings. We don't want to hurt the other person, and so forth. So the process of conscious completion then is ultimately the process of having a conversation with somebody that uses the exact same framework that I shared with you last week, where you begin with a clarity about why you want to have this conversation with the other person, right? You begin there, you invite the other person, you set the context, right? You hold a safe space for one another where you can open your heart and safely share from a real, authentic space what's really in your heart, listening to one another, seeking to connect, right? To go beyond understanding, just to really to connect. In my experience, when you really connect, a deeper sense of understanding begins to arise. Normally one that arises out of a lot of compassion, humility, and kindness for the other person. Once you really begin to see things from their perspective, so that then you can arrive at some kind of a way forward together, even if it's not what you want, so that ultimately you walk out of the conversation with love and appreciation. That is ultimately the goal. So that at least what gives you peace is the fact that you were able to share what was in your heart. Now, the art or your ability to end that relationship or that conversation from a place of appreciation and love, to me, it boils down to your ability to respond from your heart, or to respond from what I call the 12 virtues of the heart. And you're going to notice that if you're new to my work, I will often talk about the 12 virtues of the heart, them being appreciation, compassion, forgiveness, humility, understanding, valor, love, kindness, truth, freedom, harmony, and honor. All right. Why did I choose these? Well, they came to me during times of introspection, research, self-analysis, looking at my own life. And the essence of what these 12 virtues, what they're really basically pointing us at, is aspects within ourselves that will elevate us beyond the space of disconnection, anger, hurt, helplessness, anxiety, fear, in which the majority of us, will end up a relationship. Think of, for example, have you ever been in a relationship that once the relationship came to an end, you were stuck in a pattern of blame, fear, anger, or just really very resistant to embrace the shift or the change, more often than not, because of our built-in resistance to emotional pain. The majority of us don't want to feel the discomfort. So to end with appreciation and love means that we move into this place of the heart, that we literally give ourselves permission first and foremost to put a hand over our hearts, get present, and connect with what's really happening within ourselves, which basically means that you have to let your heart break. When a relationship is coming to an end, and you either know this intuitively, or you are the one that's initiating the ending of the relationship, or it's being initiated by the other person, the best thing that you can do is, instead of fighting it and resisting it, is just to welcome it and allowing it. And I know this sounds a little bit of very masochistic, but if you're committed to moving through it, the only path is one of surrendering to the feelings that you're having, rather than just being stuck on the story. So the paradox is that it begins by you allowing your heart to break more often than not before you even have the conversation. And what I mean by that is, more often than not, that means coming to your heart and being willing to admit to yourself that relationship is not working, that it must come to an end, or being able to accept that the relationship have shifted and is coming to an end, or maybe that that something's happened that had really shifted the relationship. Some of the things that we spoke about, and so the process is one of releasing and surrendering every emotion, the anger, the helplessness, even the numbness that sometimes comes in. Have you ever, somebody ever ended a relationship with you and you've been in a state of shock? I remember when I was in my early 20s, I was an actor in Venezuela, and I had this acting teacher that we became very good, close friends. And I remember that one day he invited me for a cup of coffee, and he terminated our friendship with me. He says something along the lines of, listen, I don't really feel this is a very balanced, harmonious relationship. I'm the one that's calling you all the time. I feel it's like unrequited, and I don't really think that you have I don't think you really care for me. I don't think you want the same things that I do. And so I think it's healthier for me to end our relationship, and I'm not going to be calling you or replying to your messages or, responding to you anymore. I'm not going to be available to you anymore. And I remember that when that happened, I was in a state of shock. Though from his perspective, he literally closed it, literally like the process I've been describing here in terms of ending with love and appreciation. But in my I must have been about 24, 25 years old. In my 25-year-old mind, I was in shock. I was numb. I was like, what did this guy smoke? Because for me, it was like, well, I had no idea a relationship at that time needed to be harmonious or balanced or all these things he was talking about, which are now ideals that I strive for, but I could not understand it back then. But I was completely numb. All right. So the idea is that you give yourself permission to feel whatever it is that you're feeling, right? And surrender those feelings so that little by little you can start moving through all those layers of anger. You have to get really mad before you can before you can start finding some peace and acceptance. That's just the normal path of moving through different layers of like the heavier emotions until you begin to move into the lighter emotions. Okay, after the storm, there's always a calm. So after you experience the denial, the anger, the resistance, more often than not, there's a sense of surrender, like, well, sort of like resignation and knowing that you did your best. Only then can you then start moving into a place of appreciation, where you begin to appreciate the person and all the good moments of the relationship that the relationship had. When you begin to appreciate the other person and the gifts that they brought to the relationship, the wonderful, not only the wonderful moments, but also what you were able to bring to the relationship, and the many ways in which the relationship inspired you and gave you, and gave you or fulfill your needs at the time. You also begin to move into a sense of compassion, which is the ability to basically to be able to feel the other person's pain, discomfort, and knowing that, like you, they just want to be happy. That they are doing their best at the moment with what they know, with what they have, and that they too are fighting their own battle. Most of the time, more often than not, the battles that we're fighting with other people in relationships, even though it appears to be your partner or your business partner or your friend or your lover or whoever it is, more often than not, these are battles that we're fighting with ourselves. Remember, relationships are here to be our mirrors. So more often than not, we project onto our partners, our friends, a lot of our unfulfilled desires, fantasies, and a lot of the unmet childhood needs. That's a big, big part that many of us are not aware of. So when you begin to see the other person as somebody who's in pain, right? Who's doing the best that they can. You begin to feel, it becomes easier to start moving into a place of forgiveness. What I mean by that is you begin to understand how they see the world, and you literally begin to see that it's not that they're wrong and they're doing something bad to you, but that they're doing the best that they can. I mean, it's the essence of the Christ at the cross when he said, Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they're doing. Where you can basically say, well, I forgive you because from your perspective, I can see why you don't want to be in a relationship with me anymore. And it is your perspective. And, to ultimately to forgive means to release and let go. It's your idea of your need to be right, which is the essence of what the next virtue of the heart is: humility. Right? Humility, it's a word that comes from the Latin, shares the same root as the word humus, which means earth. So to be humble basically means to be at the same ground level with another person, to basically realize that you are not better than I am, you're not less than I am, you're just another human being, just like me, human, just like me, doing the best that you can. And that, and that ultimately we just see life, relationships, even this thing that we call our relationship, from two different perspectives. And out of that arises the next virtue, which is your understanding, right? The knowledge, where the word understanding literally means to stand under. You begin to literally see the bigger perspective of the situation, or of the relationship that has led to the end. Okay, that makes it easier for you to surrender your own idea. And then out of that arises another virtue, which is valor, which is the capacity to act with courage, strength, and determination in defense of what you most value, hold close to your heart. That's where you give yourself permission to speak your truth, to ask for what you want, to express your biggest fears, or to wholeheartedly express your love, your appreciation, whatever it is that you have maybe been not expressing. Right? Out of that begins also to arise love, right? Which, more than an emotion or a thought, is more of a state of being that is nurturing, protective, uplifting, gracious. Okay. It's really, once you surrender your anger, your fear, your pride, and all these things, your need to be right, your need to hold on to the other person, your need to own them, to control them, you begin to see them as just another human being. And you begin to get this heartfelt sense of being in alignment and par with something much bigger with them. And realize the many ways in which the relationship supported you. And out of that also arises a sense of kindness, which is the ability to, or the virtue that allows you to recognize that the other person is not a stranger, but he's of your own kind. Okay, that you care for the other person beyond what you had labeled them as: partner, friends, whatever it was. But because you're related, we're all part of the same family. Right? Out of that also then begins to arise another virtue, which is freedom. Is the capacity to choose to let go, even though it may not be what you want. To choose to maybe to move in a different relationship, even though it's not what you want. Sometimes you might be the one that wants to bring the relationship to the end, but you realize while having the conversation that there are other choices. Truth begins to arise, right? The truth of what you want, what you desire. The truth sometimes of admitting to yourself or the other person that you might not be a good fit for another, that you want different things from life, that you are walking completely different path. All right. That is something that, that's one of the bigger lessons I've been learning recently in my life, with somebody that I thought was walking the same path I wanted to walk. And it turns out that in his truth within his own heart, this isn't really the path. The path I'm walking is not really the path he wants to walk. And so I released him, blessed him with love. The virtue of harmony begins to realize, where you begin to realize that ultimately, when you begin to look at the bigger intelligence of life, these relationships that appear to be coming to an end, where they're really part of the greater alignment or harmony of life that is literally reorganizing your relationships and your life to bring you relationships that are in greater alignment or in harmony with who you are becoming, right? As you grow, is normal then that your relationships begin to also shift and change around you. Remember, we are energetic beings. And the chemistry that creates this attraction, it really is magnetism. And so the magnetism is literally it's the capacity of your heart to express this magnetic field, which contains information, which is what allows other people to be drawn towards us or feel a sense of connection with us. So as your vibration shifts, the type of people that that will feel attracted to you will change. And somebody with whom you felt very deeply connected with, once there's an energetic shift in one, normally that will have a huge effect on the relationship. And then from that space of freedom, honoring the other person's truth, you begin to get a sense of this word that I just used, of what it means to honor as a virtue of the heart. Okay. Which basically means honoring your own physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being as well as the other person. Honoring that somebody else might be walking a different path. Honoring that every human being has the right to choose, to self-determine their life and their self and their direction. And that even though it may not be what you want it to be, but they have their individual sovereign right to choose who they want to be in relationship with, to choose how they want to be in a relationship, and to choose the path that they want to walk in a relationship. Sometimes a person has a strong need, especially after being in a relationship for a long time, they have a very strong need to be on their own for a while. All right. And so if you've been someone who's been, single for a very long time, and you might want to be with them because you're longing for that, but they might not be ready for that. Okay. So that's what I mean by honoring. Is just honoring means sort of understanding where the other person is without trying to change them, and loving them right where they are, not where you think they are or where you would like them to be. All right. So, we call this an art because, as any art, it takes a long time to learn. It takes a lot of experience. No art is really truly perfected unless you're out there in the arena, in the workshop, breaking a lot of vases if you're doing ceramics, or screwing up a lot of paintings if you're painting. Which basically, I guess what I'm trying to say is that we human beings learn most from our mistakes and our failures. And what that means to me is that I have probably learned more out of failed relationships, out of unconscious, incomplete relationships that have brought up tremendous amount of pain than I've actually learned from the ones where everything went well and everything kind of went by the book. Unfortunately, we do learn most by pain and by failure. And obviously there's great lessons in failure. As I said at the very beginning, it's because of all these relationships that ended throughout my early life that I learned to value. And one of the things, for example, in which that changed me, I became more expressive in my love. Right. So I made a decision. I would never hold myself back from saying or expressing my love to somebody and my appreciation to them, because exactly that, I did not know when was the last time I would see this person. And so, I want you to think of this process of conscious completion, not necessarily something that you're going to wait and implement and do when a relationship comes to an end, but literally every engagement that you have, every relationship that you have, every opportunity that you get to connect with someone. In fact, the coaching framework that I teach my students at the Academy for Applied Heart Intelligence, it always ends with love and appreciation, where we as coaches have an opportunity to honor, to appreciate something about the client, something about the experience, what we're taking away. And we basically have the opportunity to say, I love you. I love you. And I really appreciate the time, the courage. I appreciate you. I appreciate having you in my life, whatever that may be. So the sooner you begin to implement the virtues of this heart, of your own heart, I begin to look at this as not something reserved for only those relationships that bring you pain, but it's, the art of conscious completion is pretty much how you show up for every experience, which basically means whether if it's a relationship that lasted 20 years or a very brief encounter that you had with someone along the path, but that last encounter, you get to look at the other person and say, hey, thank you. I love you. Or I appreciate you. I send you my love, whatever that is. If you notice, every podcast I normally end by saying, thank you for lending me your ears, and I send you my love. It's my way of basically completing consciously and saying, thank you, I love you. All right? Because ultimately, I really do believe that, when you ask people, they're on their deathbed, what is it that the last thing they want to tell somebody that meant a lot to them will normally be, thank you, I love you, thank you for this, thank you for loving me, thank you for what you gave me, I honor this, I honor that. And then you end with appreciation. So I want to invite you to consider the possibility that this conversation is more than just having a difficult conversation at the end of a relationship, but this is just part of living life wholeheartedly in greater alignment with your heart, with what it means to live really truly from the intelligence, the love, the wisdom, and the power of your heart. It is an art. And so the sooner you begin to practice bringing more love and appreciation to your relationships, to your conversations, the sooner you will then begin to apply this. Now, let's say that you recently ended a relationship where there was no conscious completion. And for whatever reason, time, distance, or because it was done in a very unconscious way, maybe it's just in a one-way email or message where the other person basically told you, I don't want to see you anymore, or I can't be friends with you, or whatever. More often than not, people will not necessarily share the truth of what's really emotionally being triggered. They'll speak about some logistical things, right? Instead, they'll give you an excuse, but not really not really tell the truth of what's really happening underneath. Sometimes just to avoid it, and more often than not, because most people are not really connected emotionally and are aware, or they just simply don't want to hurt the other person. So let's say you now have to do this on your own. You have to find a way of doing a conscious completion process. Well, the way I would normally suggest that you would do that is the way that I do it. And I have learned to do it for myself at the end of relationships in the past with people that I have loved. And so what I want to invite you now is I want to guide you through a process. All right. And this has to be done in a process where you can find a safe, quiet space where you can come and connect with your heart and literally find a place of self-forgiveness, honor, appreciation, and love to release the other person and to complete the process. Okay? So I want you to put a hand over your heart as I guide you through a process. And what we can do is we can use this opportunity to consciously complete by ourselves. This is by ourselves. A relationship that we were not able to find that conscious closure by having a conversation with the other person. So as you put a hand over your heart, I want you to begin to breathe in and out of your heart. And I want you to think about a person with whom you have an incomplete, where the relationship has either come to an end or you find that the relationship, for whatever reason, just did not go the way you wanted, and you drifted away, but you're still holding some kind of resentment, anger, sense of loss, whatever it is that you may be still experiencing with regards to that person. So bring that person into your mind's eye. And I want you to begin to breathe in and out of the heart. And as you breathe in and out of the heart, regardless of what your previous feelings and thoughts about this person are or have been, I want you to find something to appreciate about this person. Perhaps it was something they taught you. Perhaps it was something that they brought forth in you. Maybe they made you laugh. You know, perhaps it's an experience you had with this person. More often than not, when a relationship comes to an end, we have a tendency to focus more on the negatives rather than on all the beautiful parts of the relationship and the beautiful experiences. I want you to bring forward an experience where you could say there's a sense of gratitude and appreciation. And as you breathe and allow this feeling of appreciation now to begin to open your heart and to create an energetic shift, which is also a shift in perception. As you see this person standing right in front of you, I want you to look at them straight into the eye, and I want you to say to them, I love you, I honor you, and I appreciate you. Please forgive me for all that I did to hurt you and cause you pain. I am sorry. I forgive you for all that you did to hurt me and cause me pain. And I forgive myself for all that I did that caused both you and me pain. Forgiving myself for all I did that created pain. I release you with love and I set you free. Thank you for all the lessons you taught me about myself. I am free and you are free. We are connected in the heart of God. In the heart of God, we are deeply loved. In the heart of God, we are one. Now, as you do this, imagine yourself rising beyond your body into what I would call your Christ itself, or your higher self, or your divine self, this aspect of yourself that transcends your humanity, that is filled with unconditional love. And just radiate this feeling of love and appreciation to this person. As you imagine this person now, through the power of forgiveness, appreciation, and love, imagine them become a dove, a white dove, as they freely fly away. And you continue to feel the love and appreciation, knowing that in the heart of God, you are connected. that in the heart of God, you're one. And that neither place, no time, no distance can separate you. For you are one with this person in love, in appreciation, inside each other's heart. That regardless of what happened in this relationship, you are worthy of love and that you are deeply loved here and now, no matter what. So as you continue to breathe in and out of the heart, let us just know for ourselves and for each other that life is a series of relationships that come our way for the purpose of waking us up to the ultimate reality that ultimately there's only one of us here. That's what it means to be united, to be one in the heart of God. That once we are connected to someone, regardless of external conditions or appearances, we will continue to be or to remain connected to them. That the relationship will continue to live within our own hearts. That what we're doing is we're releasing the physical aspects or attachments to how this relationship should or could or would have been, and rather just focusing on love and appreciation. And then that out of this love and appreciation, healings, forgiveness, understanding, honor, love, and miracles of love can arise. So we give thanks for knowing this. We give thanks for the opportunity to consciously release someone and to experience what it feels like to release someone with gratitude, appreciation, and with love. Knowing that even though our emotional bodies, our hearts may be experiencing some pain, the feelings of loss, it is the power of love and appreciation what ultimately heals the heart and allows it to grow in its capacity to love more in preparation for the next relationship that is to come. If there's something that I have learned is that every broken heart that I have ever experienced has always opened my heart to greater love. It's deepened my connection with my divine father and mother. It's deepened my connection and my relationship with this thing that I call love or self-love. And it has allowed me to just simply to become a more loving human being, more compassionate of other people's pain. It's also made me wiser. It's one of the many gifts of having your heart broken, which is why I often like to say that there's not such a thing as having a broken heart, or that a broken heart is ultimately a heart that's getting ready to love more. All right, so today we talked about the art of conscious completion, ending a relationship with appreciation and love. We reviewed some of the steps that we spoke about last week in terms of having a conversation, uncomfortable conversation with someone, and basically explore the idea that conscious completion is having then a conscious conversation with another person where we want to bring the cycle of our relationship through a conversation, where by bringing in the 12 virtues of the heart, we are honoring the other person, honoring our time together. We are coming from a place of appreciation, compassion, forgiveness, humility, understanding, valor, love, kindness, truth, freedom, honor, and harmony, and opening ourselves to greater love by having an even more open heart. That when we come into our hearts and we visualize someone that we deeply love, with whom the relationship has come or is coming to an end, and we begin to inwardly relate to them by honoring them with love and appreciation, forgiving them, releasing them, setting them free, and remembering that we're always connected in the heart of God. The moment we begin to do that, the moment that we begin to feel or experience a deeper sense of flow and alignment with life, in alignment with a greater intelligence that we access through and by means of our heart. Okay, we have come to the end of our time together. And I want to once again thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here with me today and for listening to what I had to share. If you want to learn more about what coaching can do for you, I'd like you to please consider booking a session with me or coming to one of my live retreats or seminars or signing up for my online courses. You can read more about my work at heartintelligencecoach.com. Please remember that ultimately there's no such thing as mind over matters of the heart, for the heart lives in its own realm. It's a realm of unconditional love, wisdom, and power that ultimately will always win. All right. Once again, thank you for being here with me today, for lending me your heart. And until the next time we meet, I send you all of my love. Bye-bye for now.